Bethesda and Todd Howard, they seem to get restless very easily. A day goes by where there's not some sort of controversy involving them, they get into a panic. They'll be running around the office like headless chickens, saying, "Oh no, we're not getting any attention this week. Surely all publicity is good publicity, even if it's bad, right?" You had the reviews last week where people were on Steam giving bad reviews. Bethesda were responding pathetically, trying to make excuses, convince the fans that they're wrong if they're bored with the game. And now they're at it again because they are introducing paid mods back into Skyrim. It's going to start there, but soon you can expect paid mods to come to Starfield and their future games like The Elder Scrolls 6 as well. To sum up what's going on, Skyrim received an update over the last 24 hours, which has basically brought paid mods back into the game. What this means is when you browse mods inside Skyrim's menu, you'll have the option of paying real money for fan-made creations. Some examples being cosmetic armor or weapon skins. This is something that may or may not be familiar to you because Bethesda have made multiple attempts at doing this in the past. First, there were paid mods that you could buy directly through Steam, but the community absolutely shat on them, so they scrapped it. They then tried to rebrand this through their own creation club back in 2017. Surprise, surprise, the fans told them to get lost yet again, and they were actually stopped by a class action lawsuit because of the shady way that they were going about things. Now the year is 2023, and seemingly they think they can finally get away with this, even though their reputation is at rock bottom thanks to the utterly mediocre Starfield and their own studio's other pathetic games like Redfall. I do want to clear up some confusion though, because some Bethesda fans have tried to argue that this is all okay. They've said things like, "Oh no, there have always been paid mods, this is fake outrage." But this is not the case. The Creation Club that people remember from a few years ago, which is where the talk of paid mods really started, that was actually mostly full of Bethesda-created mods, which we should really be calling DLC, given they created them. There were certainly fan mods on there as well, but as I understand it, those modders were actually contracted and paid for the work for the most part. They often got money ahead of time. In fact, Bethesda themselves actually refuted the claim that Creation Club content counted as mods at all. They made a point of saying they saw mods as fan-made free content separate from the Creation Club. But that has all gone out the window. Everything has changed because in this new update, the system they've introduced is literally an in-game storefront where any mod that Bethesda approves can be uploaded with a cost attached to it. There are some rules to that. I couldn't just find a dick pic on the internet, add it as a texture, and start making some cash off it. There are some standards, but those standards are likely going to be, is it appropriate? Is it going to land us in legal trouble? If the answer is no, yep, they're going to start making money off it. And as you might have guessed, Bethesda are not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. Modders selling their own mods, they get a commission, but they don't get all of the money for those mods, meaning Bethesda is taking a sizable chunk for themselves. The exact amount isn't known, and I've heard it could be covered under an NDA, but some numbers I've seen thrown around are suggesting that Bethesda are getting 70% and the modder is only getting 30%. I've seen that disputed, but it is possible, and I'm inclined to believe it because calling it a commission, as Bethesda puts it, it doesn't really sound like you're getting at least half of the money. It sounds like they're throwing you a bone. I could be wrong on that, but let's be honest, this is Bethesda. When have they done anything for their fans or the community that support them? Before we get the pitchforks out, let's talk about some of the incredible value that this update brings. For instance, you are going to be able to buy this fully functional gun for the low price of $6 in Skyrim. Not just this gun, many other skins, little improvements like this. You'll be able to spend your own real money on them. And what does that sound like? To me, it sounds like any cash store in any live service online game to date. To me, it seems like this is all a big excuse, smoke and mirrors, so that Bethesda can introduce cash shops in their single-player titles, whether it's Skyrim, whether it is Starfield. It's a way to do it without being super blatantly obvious, because they can say, no, this is just giving modders a way to earn money. Like they give a shit about the modders, it's a revenue stream for them. They are likely taking a bigger cut of these mods than the modders are getting themselves for what they're creating. This is a very Bethesda thing to do as well. They're already known for not releasing their games in a finished or even playable state in some regards, and modders are relied on to fix pretty much everything. There's not even a functional map in Starfield. It's probably going to have to be mods who create it. If we remember that controversy at launch where the NVIDIA DLSS, that graphics feature, it wasn't there. A modder had to do it, and they did in 24 hours. They got it working. Unfortunately, that particular modder did try and charge. Bethesda would like the sound of that. They would want a piece of that pie. They'd want to charge for that too. But that's an example of a fan releasing something before Bethesda could ever get it right themselves. It also seems to me like this might be Microsoft driven to some extent. Bethesda have always been greedy, but Microsoft are too. The problem with Game Pass, and Bethesda now being owned by Microsoft, all their games come to Game Pass day one. Starfield, you could play it day one through a subscription. You didn't have to buy it on Steam for $100 or something. There was an alternative. The issue is, if they're doing that, then surely Microsoft lose a whole bunch of box copy sales. Where are they getting the revenue from? It's clear from evidence that Game Pass doesn't really make enough revenue from subscriptions to probably justify developing all of these different games, given their big budgets. So how do they make money? Usually through DLCs, and that could be expansions, big pieces of content, but it can also just be weapon skins. It could be armor sets, colors, little improvements, little add-ons like that. Bethesda don't even want to make those themselves. They're happy to outsource something that could be an easy piece of work, massively profitable. Nah, we'll just give it to modders, get them to do it. We're not doing anything ourselves. That'd be too much. That seems to be where we're headed. Cash stores, microtransactions in these single-player games, and if Bethesda are criticized for it, they'll just use the defense that they're supporting modders, not just with a storefront to make it easier to find mods, but also paying modders for their own creations, even though they're taking the biggest cut. Any defenders of this, their argument usually comes back to modders getting paid fairly for their work. And there is some nuance in that. I can understand where someone is coming from when they suggest that a modder who has created a brand new piece of content, they spent hundreds of hours on developing improvements for a game, that they should get paid for that. It kind of makes sense. The issue is, though, it starts to disrupt the entire modding community when there is that monetary incentive. Modding is not just a solo practice for many people. It is community-driven, meaning that modders are often working together. Even if they're on separate projects themselves, often that shared knowledge is what makes modding easy. People can share ideas, share efficiencies, they can min-max the process, and that's why us as players are able to play and enjoy these mods. If you start to put up paywalls, modders aren't going to work together as much anymore. If one modder makes a technical breakthrough that makes creating one style of mod much easier, they're probably not going to share it when they could keep that all to themselves and make all the money through all the mods in that style. And I don't think every mod is going to be like this. For instance, if we look at the Skyrim modding community here, there's plenty of posts. My mods are never going to cost money. I'll never charge for my mods, including Skyland. Good on these people, I believe them. There will be plenty of modders who won't charge, but because of the lack of community learnings working together across the board, it doesn't matter. For us as players, we are going to get worse mods, and some mods will cost money. It'll be the only way to play them. There's going to be that group of people who say that mindset is entitled, expecting free mods, free labor from people. That shouldn't be allowed. We should be paying for all the mods and supporting the creators. creators. The option is there right now, by the way. Most of these modders have a Patreon, there's a PayPal link, something you can support them on, and they do essentially get paid for their mods that way. But I would argue, in some ways, it's entitled for modders to expect to make content for an existing game that they've got no ownership in, they didn't develop the game, and then they think that the paying public is just going to give them money for that little improvement. If we're super honest with ourselves, most mods that exist, they are little quality of life improvements, they're interesting, and people download them more for a bit of fun, to give them a bit of a test run, give them a chance. They are not crucial to the experience, and if you suddenly have to pay $10 for a mod that makes the sun shine a little brighter, or the pebbles on the road look a little bit clearer, people aren't going to pay for that. They're just going to give it a miss and move on. And it's basically going to mean that even if a modder makes a few bucks off their mod, there's going to be far less people experiencing it. There's going to be less engagement with the game, probably less players on Skyrim if they feel like they can only get that modded experience by spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on all these different mods. If it comes to that, people are just going to look for other games that don't resort to these practices. The short of it is, if Bethesda get away with this, they introduce paid mods, they convince all of the modders to start releasing the mods on their store for a price, it is going to kill the modding scene to some extent. There might be copers who are creating mods who say, no, it's fine, we deserve to get paid. It's fine if you want to have that mindset. But we as consumers, we are not going to be feeling like we're getting great value spending $15 on a skin. Remember when it's priced, Bethesda are taking a huge cut of that. Probably the majority. It's just not going to work. And you know it's just going to start with Skyrim, but it's soon going to come to Starfield. This is the whole plan. Bethesda, Microsoft, they talk about a 12-year plan for Starfield. Is this it? Is it just paying for community-created content rather than Bethesda building feature-complete expansions with planets you can actually explore, perhaps, instead of a loading screen simulator? If this is going to be the new norm, microtransaction stores in their games, my advice to anyone playing on PC is to consider getting their games on GOG where available. You can play an older version that won't have these pathetic updates where you are forced into their new storefronts. You can ignore all of that. You can keep just downloading your mods for free on the older versions of the game, and you can continue on. Don't support Bethesda. Don't play Starfield if they release this update for that as well. Probably not hard, as it's not fun to play anyway, but we've got to do something to make sure we don't live in a world where paid mods are normal. It's going to destroy communities. It'll mean less value for us as players. We will get less, and worst of all, it rewards companies like Bethesda who are doing very little to actually earn our money at the moment. I thought they'd hit rock bottom. They disappointed us again. I'm sure they'll disappoint us next week as well. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.